Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Rapid Recap here at Inside Nebraska. He's Greg Smith, I'm Zack Carpenter. We're on the practice field of the Huskers Hawks Championship Center practice field. We got lights around here. This is where they bring the recruits in here. They got tables around here. Back there's a bunch of balloons over here, a bunch of lights over here.
Looks like because a good time could be had in here.
Yeah, they're celebrating a 35-11 win today, the first win of the Matt Rule era. Apparently, Greg, first thing we need to talk about is why they allowed a touchdown with like 10 seconds left on the board in garbage time. Not a lot of negatives really to talk about, especially after those first 2 weeks. I mean, other than which we'll get to in a second, the Heinrich Harburg fumble on the sack fumble, that was not his responsibility, his fault. Other than that, it's all positive in this win.
Can we start with that one negative? Because I do want to say something about that. You said on a sack fumble that wasn't his fault. That was a normal, that's how fumbles are supposed to happen play. So I think everyone was
good point
for that one. Because, and they bounced back nicely. And he was asked about that in his post-game press conferences. You know, he had a nice podium game, the pride of Kearney, Nebraska, up at the podium. And he talked about, it was kind of weird. You just didn't want people to get down, and they rallied back nicely from that. And that was good to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to say that in the press conference after you win, obviously. But, I mean, be honest. What were you thinking as soon as that fumble? I mean, they had a super efficient 6-play scoring drive. Heinrich Harburg had 4 rushes and 2 completions, touchdown to Billy Kemp to polish it off. And then the defense forces another 3 and out. They get the ball back, like, inside their own 10-yard line. Boom, sack, fumble. And it's like, I mean, we all had to be thinking, oh, Jesus, here we go again. And Harburg even admitted after the game, that started going through guys' minds.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was the natural thing. Here we go again. But then you know what I actually honestly thought right after that was just gives the defense another opportunity to show what they've got. And they did. They'll do a field goal in that situation because this defense has been really, really good. Like, we had wondered if, through those first 2 games, if, that was some sort of a fluke. I think people weren't necessarily thinking that, but you kind of could wonder a little bit. And they went out today and they dominated. They did what good defenses should do to opponents that are not in their league. That's what that was supposed to look like. And Nebraska was dominant on defense all night long up until the last garbage time drive.
We'll get back to Harburg in a second, but since you're on the defense, I mean, they dominated a MAC team, a group of 5 team, like they were supposed to. Yeah. It's the same way they dominated the Minnesota offense up until the last 5 minutes of that game. It's the way they dominated, or at least kept up and kept pace, shut down maybe is too much of a word, Colorado until the last 5 minutes of the first half, when they were put in some tough positions because of the turnovers. Right. But that defense, I mean, that's the confidence you have when you have a crew that's playing as nasty and as physical like that. I mean, they have a billion mantras that they came out with this offseason. Dominant contact, 1% better.
RDF.
But RDV is the one that, I think so far through 3 games has been the one that's shown itself the most, that this defense embodies that the most, the relentless, disciplined, and violent. They allowed, up until that last play or NIU drive, they had surrendered 16 rushing yards, only 16 rushing yards, and I think less than 100 total yards all game. And they've now allowed 132 rushing yards through 3 games, which is 47.3, I think I calculated, rushing yards allowed per game, which is going to be, it might be number 2 by the end of the night. Air Force number 1 at 44.3.
Pretty good.
So you might be number 2 behind them, and 14 sacks because the defense had 3 sacks again tonight. It's also number 1 in the country.
Yeah, that's huge. It feels like those are the things that we've talked about this before, and it feels like I know we talked about it last year, but we've talked about it around here for years. That's the type of defense that elite Big Ten defenses play, right? That's what you have to be able to do to compete in the Big Ten on the defensive side of the ball. I think for right now, they've got that taken care of as long as they stay on track and stay hungry. And I think they are because, we heard from Quentin Newsom, and he talked about going out there and doing your job, and that's what they're supposed to do. I think that those guys will stay hungry, and they want more because sometimes you get that taste of success and you just want to keep going, right? Plus, I think everybody right now, Matt Rule talked about this a little bit as well. He said he actually challenged the defense this week to make this a defensive football team, and they accepted that challenge, I think, in spades. But also he made a note, and I'm laughing because he said it kind of in a joking way, that, when you do that, though, people will say, oh, it's ugly football because people want to see points. But he said he had a lot of fun watching those guys fly around, and I bet a lot of Husker fans did too.
What type of team have you been saying? What type of type of style does this Nebraska team need to play in order to win some games? What
the exact thing that we saw in today's game, which is a lot like some of their Big Ten West counterparts that play. You know, I know people hate to hear us say this, but it's an Iowa, Minnesota, kind of Wisconsin previous to this year with Chris, kind of a style of football.
Illinois
last year is a great point. Illinois last year too. You have a strong running game. You don't beat yourself in special teams. You play lights out defense, and you're going to give yourself a chance in a lot of football games, and that's what it looks like Nebraska's trending towards. Special teams, not to get in the weeds, and special teams is still kind of, it's not elite. It's been fine. It's not cost them games like it had in years past. Offense, though, obviously still has a long way to go, but we saw some strides in the right directions tonight with Heinrich Harburg.
Yeah, I mean, they're surrounding that elite defense with special teams that's good enough. I mean, no missed extra points, no missed kicks, anything like that. An offense tonight that was good enough. I mean, 14 points in the first half, and then finished with 35 is good enough if you can put consistent performances like that together to supplement this defense. They're finally playing that complementary football that Matt Rule and Trev Alberts had talked about so many times, emphasizes one of the focal
right
points.
Here. They said it right here on Matt Rule's
press conference
very first
right
press conference in here. Yes, he did.
And also something notable before we get to the offense, Rule in his post-game press conference, he talked about how the infrastructure of this defense from previous coaching staffs was there, because he mentioned by name Eric Chenander, Bill Bush, Barrett Ruud, and Mike Dawson, as he mentioned them by name to say that this defense had been well coached, so they were like left in good hands, or they had a solid foundation to build off of when they got here.
Yeah, they did. And you know, that kind of tracks with some of the things that we all kind of say in thinking about this team, is that the defense was kind of left at a better starting point for Matt Rule than we thought the offense was, by a pretty wide margin. It's not just the fact that they had more talent left over. The culture, if you want to go with that vaunted C word, was also better in that room, because we felt like overall they had better coaches. And so like he talked about, Rule did today, you know, you have a veteran guy like Luke Reimer who was used to playing in one system and had played well. He just needed to kind of shift that focus to this new system, and then he could run free. But they also have very good position coaches. He did not say, Rule didn't go and say, well, we've got good ones now too, because I think that's kind of implied, but I do think that we have to give those guys some props too, starting with Tony White. I tweeted out a photo of him and said, give him the game ball, because he definitely deserves one because of the job he's been doing so far. But Rob Dvorak, at the linebackers coach, is someone we really didn't know anything about coming into the season. His linebacker group is playing really good football. Terrence Knighton looks to be right now the next kind of defensive line coach star that Matt Rule has found, and he's got his group playing very well, which kind of headlined tonight by the guy that we thought was the player of the game on defense, Nash Hutmacher, with another multiple tackles for loss game and a big time game out there.
Yeah, and then just to wrap up, talk about, I mean, maybe we didn't bury the lead because we mentioned him right off the bat, but to dive into a little bit more is Heinrich Harburg, and I want to stall here for a second because I want to get his official stat line out, because I don't want to get it wrong. I know he had 98 rushing yards, and he was 8 for 12. What do you think his final stat line was?
Oh, I would probably go, I'm going to say 8 for 14 and knock a couple off for like 150 yards passing and maybe like 90 yards rushing. Let's
see. Hold on, this is great radio. Glad we're not on the actual radio. He had 98 rushing yards on 21 carries, so 4.7 yards per carry, and 14 for 24. It's 58% completion percentage, and I don't have the passing yards mark here. I can't find it. So anyway, I think it was over 100. Either way, it's funny because he commanded that first drive. You come out, first career start for him, like you mentioned, Kearney Catholic, former star at Kearney Catholic. And he comes out 4 rushing attempts, I think a couple on a scramble, 26-yarder to Marcus Washington right up the middle on a post route, and then the touchdown passer. There's like 3 or 4 times tonight where he manipulated his arm angle. He changed the slot down to throw a sidearm pass to evade pass rushers, and threw touchdown pass to Billy Kemp. He threw another one later to Thomas Fedoni. So first time that Nebraska has scored a point in the first half this year. I thought he was poised, and I thought that he showed that if he could play like that with ball security and ball control, that you can win with this style of play with this quarterback.
Yes, and I thought that as Helen or Jeff Ekstrom upstairs in the booth during the game, I thought that he showed nothing that would make you say they couldn't move forward with him. Not at least this game. I thought you saw building blocks to where like you saw some things that looked like a guy who hadn't started a game before in Power 5 football. There were some moments there. That throw where he even admitted after the game over the middle that should have been intercepted. There were some plays like that, but for the most part, he looked really comfortable, and I think that was a good building block. Coach Rule got the very last question he got was about whether or not basically there was a quarterback controversy. He kind of poured cold water on that and kind of gave compliments to both and said that they could win with both. I'm curious to see, though, as of right now, who would start that next game. I would have a strong mind if I were him to start Haarberg and kind of let him build off of what he had this week and keep things rolling. But we'll see. It'll be a big topic this week.
I feel like you almost have to, but like you said, it will be a big topic this week. We'll have it covered. They're playing Louisiana Tech next week, the second home game as they welcome them in here before Michigan for the third straight home game at the end of the month. So one more game to hopefully have another game go like this where you sort of cruise to a win and you have your young guys playing snaps there at the end. So like Greg said, we got more coverage at InsideNebraska.com on Heinrich Harburg, on the quarterback situation, on this vaunted defense now that is ranking up there among the most elite in the country through 3 weeks, which is pretty fascinating to say that
that dang 3-3-5 that they talked so much about over the offseason. We heard it all offseason. How would it hold up? So far, so good.
Hey, there were questions about Jeff Sims from the fan base about how he would do coming over here. There were questions about a 3-3-5 defense and how that would work. And those questions sort of evened out so far through 3 weeks. So once again, for Greg Smith, I'm Zack Carpenter, and we'll catch you guys again next time.